Right, I'll be right with you. Hey, for those of you that do not want to stick around, let me get right to it. I think that Nvidia DLSS Anti-Aliasing on and frame generation on is going to hurt doing 4K and trying to live stream it. With regards to Nvidia Reflex, I don't really notice that much of a difference. And the only other negative is OBS multipass full and causes encoder lag. So as much as I'm trying to give you an absolute perfect 3080 or whatever it is, 3840 by 2160 image, I'm still now limited by OBS and I can't set multipass to full. So it's at, doing a quarter resolution thing. Anyway, if you want to stick around and see all the numbers, and let me show you what I'm changing, and then please do. If you want to see how this rig can do, I think, everything that you need it to do for Microsoft Flight Simulator 2020 or 2024, I think this is a mostly affordable rig that can do whatever you want. So stick around and I'll be right with you. I think that's everything that I need. Let me get back to the Microsoft Flight Simulator tests in here. And at this resolution, it scrunches down the testing data up in the upper right-hand corner. It might be hard for you to read. Hard for me to read with these old eyes. But anyway, I finally found the cause that I wasn't getting the full 2160, and that was an Nvidia setting. But as you see, the screen, the post, and the render are all 3840 by 2160. Okay, so now I am confident that the signal that I am pushing to you through YouTube, even though it's not 100%, because it's trying to encode as I'm sending it to you, but then, when you end your live stream, it continues a transcode. So either way, you still have the option at the moment to click on YouTube and choose to view this at 4K, 3840 by 2160, using that settings button below. Okay. So the reason why I'm saying DLS rendering for anti-aliasing is bad, although it's amazing, it takes away your ability to keep an eye on this, your render scaling. So by having this option here, I can ensure that what's coming out is at 3840 by 2160. Okay, so if I come up here right above it and go back to Nvidia DLSS Super Resolution, now it might provide a prettier picture at the output on your end. But let me apply and save this. Okay, now in the upper right-hand corner, now actually I have to stand up and get closer to the screen, so let me take the microphone with me. It says the render is 1920 by 1080. All right, I've got OBS set to push this. Well, OBS sees the desktop. at 3840 by 2160, and the output scaled resolution is 3840 by 2160. So in YouTube, it might be tricking YouTube to think that I'm still doing 4K, and I maybe am. This is where I could possibly use some of your expertise on what do you think about all this. So please leave your comments below. I'm no expert at this. All I can do is go by what's showing up on the screens and the way things are set. Okay. So now you'll see this at the moment. I can bump this back up to 60. But the reason why I have the common FPS values in OBS set to 48, Thomas Edison said that the maximum amount of frames that we would need, he believed at that time, was 48. He says that the human eye sees at 48 frames a second. So beyond that, as good as it looks, it's somewhat artificial, right? That's my guess. Okay, so in order to potentially save any sort of horsepower when trying to do this experiment, I've reduced the OBS frame rate to 48. I don't have a 48 hertz on the monitor, on the television, or the UHD 4K TV here. But I have a 50 hertz setting. So I've dropped the hertz on the monitor down. And in the NVIDIA control panel, you can set the frame rate capping as well, and turn on VSync. Everybody's keep off the VSync. Well, if you're going for, absolute, you must have that extra bit of FPS. Then all of this is counterproductive to all of that at the moment. Not that this machine, you can't just start turning things down and up and make this, do 100 frames a second. But again, that's what I'm going for, is trying to get you a signal at 3840 by 2160. All right, so let's turn it back off. Okay, you see that we lost our render scaling option within DLS turned on. All right, and it's set to performance, and let's see what happens when I change it to quality. Does it change the render scaling? Okay, so it brought this scaling up into the 1440 region, so like 2K, right? Okay, so that's why I'm saying no. As much as it might end up looking awesome, we didn't even look at the screen. Let's take a look. Here. Well, first let me unpause. So the idea that 48 frames per second is all that we need. And I'm finding out that, as I'm watching and I move the camera around, my eyes I don't have motion blur on. I think it eats up resources. And at 48 frames, I'm finding that as the camera's moving around at the default setting in the cockpit, my eyes are doing their own motion blurring. So, okay. The response, moving around for a plane like this, maybe a little bit of micro stutter, but I do have traffic up. I have everything set to as high as I can on the terrain and objects. So come down here, 400% terrain level of detail. And people are like, you're insane. You don't need to turn up that high. Well, at the moment, I want to give you the absolute best before we mess with other things. There's other things you can turn down. Okay, the object level of detail all the way up. You're crazy. Yeah, I know. The vector data. I want the ground to look as best as it can deliver, and I've downloaded using the cache the highest resolution maps for this area that I can. All right, there's so many trees here, I don't care. And I'm not down at the ground yet and camping, so I don't need my grass and bushes on at the moment. So another thing too to comment on, there's like everybody say, there's no setting for everything. And unless you have the most uber of machines, you can just set everything on ultra and forget about it. then the way to think about this is there's a setting for every different type of situation, weather and ground or air situation that you're in. So be flexible, be willing to come in here and move things around to apply the ultra settings where you want them. Not just everywhere, woohoo, and throw frames and everything, woohoo, and your machine's going crazy. All right, so back down in here, like motion blur. Again, I don't need it on. My eyes are working just fine. Bloom doesn't really happen unless it's in photography, so you don't need bloom. Lens flare, same thing. If I'm trying to capture a photo shot, then I might turn on bloom and lens flare. Because again, then it's simulating going through a camera lens, the way a camera lens sees. But right now, no, just using our eyes. The windshield effects, take it or leave it. It doesn't need up too much horsepower, but I don't need them. I guess for realism, you want to feel that you're really in that cockpit. All right, I'm up a little high, not too high, not like airliner high. And so, the shadows are all right. The light bouncing off things, I want to keep it pretty high. So closer to the mountains in the Garden of the Gods, so you can see the way it's handling the terrain over there. This is a really touristy attraction place. So I don't think anybody's done a handcraft of the Garden of the Gods yet, but the simulator does a great job by itself. And I'll turn on some weather for you. We'll get some haze in the air, which makes things always look a little bit better with a little noise in the sky. If you're going for realism, the clear skies is probably not the best photo option because it's clean, but there's usually a lot of atmospheric disturbance going on, and that noise can make a scene look a little bit more real. All right, so you see up there in the corner, I'm holding 50 FPS. I'm shooting for 48, but the hertz of the monitor, it's holding 50 hertz. So now let me prove the frame generation thing. You're like, well, turn on frame generation. Isn't that what NVIDIA is all about? Okay, so let's come down to frame generation and turn it on and see what happens. Before, and maybe it won't happen this time, but almost always when I turn this thing on, it's trying to generate more frames than are needed for the screen. And, okay, well, because I'm capped, but I think you will find in most circumstances, if all you're shooting for is 60 frames a second, and you're trying to limit your GPU workload, that the frame generation can be cut in half. So no, we're not doing a solid 48. It's fluctuating quite a bit. But when I'm not capped in the NVIDIA control panel, yeah, sometimes you'll see up to half of your FPS gone for whatever reason. I guess it's trying to work too hard. I guess if you have a slower machine and with the right settings, you've got things tweaked to speed as opposed to graphics. Reflex. It's Duran too. As you see, it got VSync on. Oh, let's go monitor this real quick. Back over to, hopefully OBS hasn't been up this entire time. It has, right? Yeah. Great. All right, well, since I was over here looking, we've only lost 2 frames to render lag and 2 frames to encoder lag. I'm really sorry about that with the, let me turn back on the scene switcher. It's always happening to me. It's a curse. Okay. Back up to here. 3840 by 2160 with Nvidia DLSS Super Resolution on. Up here in this thing, you'll see your render has changed, so you're not outputting fully. Okay, with the frame generation on, it's going to hurt rather than help in this matter, as I find. 100% monitor refresh rate set at 50 hertz. So now when we go back to turn that off and put the anti-aliasing back to TAA, we get our render scaling slider back, which we can ensure that we're doing 3840 by 2160. Apply that and save. So it's not doing anything funny with the image. And there we are back up in the render, 3840 by 2160. So we know now what we're sending out to YouTube is the right size all the way through the pipeline. Let me reset the specs on OBS. Try not to mess up. So we've lost one. So there's some tweaking I can do so that I don't lose a single frame. Control panel. I've got the scene switcher back on and it won't stay on it. You're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't. So you see that we're in Manage 3D Settings, Microsoft Flight Simulator there. And I'm letting the, because of what you gurus are saying, I'm sticking with what you're saying, and I'm letting the NVIDIA control panel handle the anisotropic filtering, so it's set to 16x here and turned off in the simulator settings. Now, I don't know how you feel about any of these other settings, but, you know, please feel free to comment. I'm no expert. So the max frame rate, I find that if you set it at the frame rate that you want, it like cuts it in half. Meaning that if I set for 60, if I come in here and I turn this thing on, and I set it for 60 frames per second to cap it, in the simulator, it goes to 30. And try as I might, or whatever settings that I try messing around with, it sets the number in half. So I've kind of doubled that. I want to get, you know, 48 to 50 frames. So I've got this thing set to around 97. Texture filtering high. So we will fly around for a minute, and then I'm going to go ahead and turn everything back over to 60 frames, because you may be like, you're not. If you can do it, why don't you do it? All right, I'll do it. I'll do it. Hang on. I've just recently reset everything back up with this new PC and getting OBS set up, and I haven't had anybody on the other end to let me know if the settings are working right at all, especially with regards to audio. Let me know if you find any problem with the audio. Too loud, too boomy, too me. Beautiful, dangerous. People lose their lives climbing these rock faces. This is called the Garden of the Gods, if you didn't know that. So smooth handling with the drone camera. I think I have live weather on, and let's see if I have airline traffic on. These are other things that can eat up your horsepower, but I'm still doing 4950. So I like the road vehicles, and right now we're not near the airport, so out here I like turning up road vehicles as much as I can without damaging things. And when I'm at the airport, I'll turn these down and turn these way up. Just depends on the experience. Now, again, this is all for graphic purposes, to try to find that fine line between the best graphics. Okay, now let me be clear. There's gaming and relaxing and hobbying, and then there's testing. So if I was only concerned about my testing for the day, I want to do a flight plan, I wanted to get the charts out, I want to, do it by a flight by the book, or I want to concentrate on certain flying things, whatever. If I'm in practice mode, all the graphics in the world ain't gonna help, So in moments like that, it's nice having this kind of a rig now where I'm not always stuck in the low end. I've never owned a rig like this before. This is the best PC I've ever owned. I've never had the luxury of setting anything above high, not one single setting ever. Usually always down in the lows. That was the nice thing about actually being stuck with a mid to low grade machine all through 2020, is I was forced to get in here into the settings and muck around. Where do I want the graphics to go? I'm on a live stream, where do I need to put it? Well, I don't need it here. So, either way, always trying to do the best graphically for you. See what else. The data. Yeah, air traffic is on. So right now we haven't seen anything, and maybe if I can save a little bit of horsepower, we're not near an airport. If our live weather wasn't important, but I wanted to show you that we can still maintain our 50 frames with live weather on, I'll definitely keep all that on, but I'm just going to tweak things about here. Cache settings set to the 70 gigs, bandwidth unlimited, and I've got Colorado Springs again in the highest maps I can get at the moment. I think that's all I need to show you there. Okay, now let me show you that I can do it at 60 hertz. So let me go to my monitor settings. I might have to turn off the stream for like 30 seconds and try to kick it back on with 60 hertz. But you can't see, but I'm going to my display settings and I'm going from 50 hertz to 60 hertz. Okay. And you can actually, you saw up there, we actually changed for a minute and went up into close to 60. Okay, now I'm in OBS again, and what I'm going to have to do is, we lost some frames. What I'm going to have to do is disconnect the stream for a minute, but I need to change this setting and get back to 60 frames. Okay. I can't do it while I'm streaming. So again, I'm going to hit stop, quickly jump in here, change back, and then hit restart. So hopefully I don't lose you. If I do, hey, have a great day. So hopefully we're back, and I have been successfully able to change it. Yeah. So still doing 3840 by 2160, 60. Let me stand up and look at the screen over here. We are still rendering it 3840 by 2160. And now, because it's well, now you see that up there in the corner, we're 58 to 60 frames per second. Okay, we dropped back down to the 40s. All right, let's go into our control panel and turn the frame rate control off. All right, now you can see up in the corner. 52s, 49s, we hit 60 a second ago. There's 59. There's 60, but not constant. But hey, you know, it's doing it. No jitters when you move the camera around. I've turned down sharpness. You can get a sharper picture, but your eyes don't really work that way either, you know, with haze in the air. So I can turn it up so that it's sharp all the way across the entire image. But again, it's artificial, especially with the lighting up here at this elevation, I find. So it's better to leave it hazy. So, but here's the fidelity sharpening, and you know, but this usually does take a pretty good hit on FPS. I look over at Pike's Peak. Yeah, now it's behind the wing. So yeah, I mean, if you got that Eagle Eye 2020 plus vision, you might like it. Didn't hurt too bad. Let me lower it just a tiny bit. Again, really here, because the I guess the altitude or whatever, it really does get quite hazy. Like when you're looking out on the horizon, sometimes it most likely you don't really get that clarity, I think, out to that level. It really starts all bleeding into that white color. That didn't really, again, it doesn't really matter. It's your preference. Again, I think this machine will deliver whatever you want. Okay, I said I wanted to go into the control panel.